G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks After Ukraine War Update for the 5th of September 2025. Now there's a lot of talk and I know a lot of people feel that there's not a lot of action, but trust me, President Trump hasn't forgotten, and all the critics who keep saying he hasn't done enough, they're crybabies. They're always trying to undermine Trump. They're always trying to undermine the peace process. They're always expecting instant gratification because they always want to turn around and say, look what we did. They don't care about other people's success. They only care about themselves. And in the world of politics, perception, unfortunately, is currency. Now, the left-wing media are crowing about a coalition of 26 countries claiming to commit to post-war Ukrainian peacekeeping. Really, they're committing to keeping Zelensky in power because Europe is slowly morphing into fascism yet again. You have Keir Starmer, Macron, and other politicians talking about having multiple careers going forward, and when they're finished, when their nations are finally finished with them, they'll go on to the EU, like Ursula von der Leyen and all the Rutte and all the other screwballs that crave power, and yet they talk about Putin, who's just one man, because let's face it, they hate their reflection in the mirror. And Trump is the disruptor to all of this. Now, Macron and his little bitch have, of course, held meetings because Zelensky doesn't want to be in Ukraine where it's easy for his enemies to kill him. Well, except for the British trying to keep him alive, that is. Because it ain't his own people who's on his side. Now, there's been Russian drone attacks and Ukrainian drone attacks. Russian troops have repeated the story. Is this, I'm sure, 5th? Yep, they've repeated the story again. Although this could be a different village. Let's see. Have they actually got yesterday's story still up? This happens so often. There we go. Key events for the 4th. Let's go for it. They've decided that they're going to slow load. Just on the spur of the moment, I decided, let's just check this time, because I'm not sure if it's the same village name. I've seen it marked off and on the map, but today it's not marked. But I found it, sort of, I think. No, it's not the same name. Okay. Wait a minute. It's not there. It's not there. They've moved a story. Not going back to the video to check. Alright, so Russians taken a village. Coalition of the Willings, talking about post-war security guarantees. They're not talking about going in today. Macron has ruled that out. Okay? He has made it clear that he is only moving when the conflict stops. He originally said 26, which he did not name. He's actually trying to persuade the US, Canada, and others to join him. All we know for now is that it's France, Germany, and England. And look at them. Get a hotel room, you two, that they can't decide which one's going to wear the dress. And, of course, Ukraine must be a steel porcupine, says Ursula, always lying. Now, European leaders must stop buying Russian oil. And Zelensky took this as a sign that he has permission to attack Russian pipelines. Because hell be paid. This is my criticism of Trump too, but he has sanctions on Russia. He's trying to put pressure on Russia, but he's allowing Zelensky to basically ruin the lives of other people who want nothing to do with him or his conflict, because Zelensky's a little bitch. And people basically have Hungary, Slovakia, and I think soon Poland are all going to start taking out, start cutting off Zelensky from money, start cutting off support. I think the coalition of willing is not going to be as big as they think it is. Latvia and others too. I think most of Eastern Europe is going to soon be done with Zelensky. He's just making enemies every day with his non-stop give me. People are getting sick of his give me grift. Now there's airstrikes up here in the north. There's fighting here in the buffer zone with shelling of Sumy. There is shelling and artillery. Sorry, there's shelling and light exchanges here in the north. There's still fighting in Kupiansk. There's been no movement here in the north of Lyman, though there is still fighting. There was a breakthrough yesterday at Silvesk, but no further action. Now, this is the village yesterday marked as taken, and today we have this village marked as taken by Ukraine, but no marker here, no changes to the lines. Now there's been fighting around, but not near or in Chasiv, and there's been no real movement or advance north, but there is some movement south of Chasiv. It's now they're bulging out south of here. They're moving up here faster. They're moving to take up positions for the siege of Krominskia, though they've got some towns in the way, though some of them have fallen to the Russians, and Russia's taken a little bit of land here, but that has, again, not much here in the north, which used to be very fast-paced. Now, the Russian Ministry of Defense claims to take an average of 700 square kilometers a month or something, but that's up from 300, but it's not really reflected on the map. Now, there's been some slight changes to the map, but really, overall, the amount of land has not changed. It's just smoothing of the lines. The doesn't seem to be any fighting here at all. The Ukrainians are holding this road. They do apparently have shown that they are in the centre. There's been brief exchanges, but neither side has updated their maps, despite the fact they've been fighting in and around mostly south of Novgorod and north. But again, there's been a little bit of movement here, not much. There's still some Ukrainians holding out down here. Same with trenches, and there's going to be landmine clearing for years going on in most of the road. That's what it's been. There's been photos from the Russian Ministry of Defense having mine clearers come up and down this road. There's this road is littered with burnt-out vehicles. Russians have previously stormed into Pavlovsk using armoured dozers. These are T90s with dozer tracks, because the T9... But the state of the roads is such that, and so is the mines, and the roads are broken and unstable, that they can't bring a lot of heavy artillery up at a time. It's been a real slog. With the Ukrainians pushing the Russians back here to the road, Russia's gone for the flanks and had a big breakthrough here, because Ukrainians, every time they move, Ukrainian army, every time they move men and machines to create an offensive elsewhere, Russia takes hold of the land they cleared. So the Ukrainians that were down here have been cleared. Not by Russia. Russia's just moved in to fill the vacuum. There's probably a National Guard force or something there, but they're still fighting. But they've been flanked. Russia's made tiny gains here, but not much, and after that, very little going on, other than the usual drone and missile strikes on Dnipro, with the Ukraine targeting Lugansk, and because Zelensky feels that they're legitimate military, everything's a legitimate military target that's got a Russian flag on it. Doesn't matter if he doesn't care how many civilians. He intends to get rid of every civilian in this area. You know it. Okay? Nobody wants to ask the question of Zelensky, what are you going to do to the civilians if you take back these towns? Because they don't like you. Okay? He turns a blind eye to murder. That is not someone we should be supporting. You abandoned so many other... What gets me is America has abandoned dictatorships before. They abandoned Venezuela, they abandoned Cuba, they abandoned Vietnam. You're winning in Vietnam. Walter Cronkite sold you a false bill of goods. So, but it was the cost of victory, according to Nixon. That could have been a fair and legitimate response. But we know now that the American leadership knew and was military leaders were incompetent. They didn't want a Air Force victory. They didn't want the Naval Assistance Force. There was the Marines and Navy SEALs so they withdrew a lot of the special forces that were leading the victory, and they undermined their own allies by providing them with subpar equipment. America's got so much corruption that it hasn't dealt with for so long. It's become the norm. And that's why they don't like Trump, because of the norm. And the military operation in Ukraine is no better. These armoured vehicles, they look impressive, but they can't stop heavy caliber. They're only good for... these windows break when they have bricks thrown at them. If you don't believe me, look at the riots in South Africa recently. The South Africans have... not South Africa. Where was the UN recently attacked? Was it South Africa? UN force was attacked with bricks and rocks. Actually, it wasn't South Africa. It was South Nigeria. And they were attacked. Now the Russians, they have the same problem with the security forces in South Africa. Have better armoured vehicles than the militaries of Europe. These are the police. The police have better armoured vehicles in South Africa. And even they, right, the ones they deploy, every time a ballistics expert will tell you, every time a new armour comes out, it is tested to the point of breaking, and they value and they realise, right, particularly in Russia, but they resist using depleted uranium because of the long-term health costs. Not just to the soldiers, but to the workers. But there's going to be a lot of people. We're going to start hearing about Ukraine syndrome because of all the. Now, this ain't chemical weapons. This is just in the everyday course of military action. You're exposed to a lot of toxins. There's the fumes from your fuel. There's the fumes from your smoke. There's the fumes from the cordite. There's all the death and destruction brings out pretty much all the negative, the bacteria, the viruses. You're exposed to poor living standards, poor medical care. I don't care how much you brag about medical care on the front line. Now, there's so much talk about Western troops, but remember, there's no need to deploy Western troops, even after peace is achieved, because all you're doing is Ukraine has to fix Ukraine, and the West is just looking for ways to occupy yet another country. Zelensky, and it's just to prop up Zelensky. But there's a fakeness about it. Look at a forced smile, okay? You don't get wrinkles and tension lines if you're happy to see somebody. You're forcing your body to smile. He is holding back. Look at how he's held back. He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't like him. Let's face reality. Let's tell the truth, no matter where the cards may fall. Zelensky is hurting Hungary and Slovakia because he has a green light to attack Russia. Now, Trump, just because Trump is unhappy, should not give Zelensky the permission to ruin other people's lives. But he calls them sanctions. Even the EC says that the security of critical infrastructure. Zelensky, who constantly complains about attacks on his infrastructure, attack other people's infrastructure. I hate hypocrisy. Is the greatest evil. Because if you think you're entitled to do anything, you will eventually commit acts of evil. And Ukraine has. They have extrajudicial murders are routine in Ukraine. And I don't care how much. Russia's not our country. We have no right to interfere in Russia because we won't interfere in Ukraine. And we shouldn't be interfering in Ukraine. We shouldn't be supporting Ukraine. But the left, they bleat morality when it comes to the right. But no, they're hypocrites. Now, the sticking point, we have the peace deal, okay? It's simple. Do you need to really know what it is? It's simple. There'll be a freeze on Kherson and Zaporozhye, where the front lines currently sit. We go to Donetsk. The Ukrainians are... So even this tiny area, there'll be a freeze. All along here, there'll be a freeze. Get to this corner. The Ukrainians will withdraw all the way... All this, the Ukrainians, north of Lyman, up to here, the Ukrainians are to withdraw. This is the sticking point for Ukraine. They want to keep all of this. They want Russia to withdraw from all of this. All of this, 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 all of this. And then on top of that, Ukraine wants 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trillion, 7.6 trillion now, according to some estimates, the question is, what happens to the people here? They go to Russia, says Ukraine. They're Russians. They go to Russia. This is Ukraine. He welcomes the Ukrainians, the proud patriots, the hot resistance. But if you can't prove your resistance, what's going to happen to those who are just merely bystanders? They will be murdered like everybody else. Okay? The Ukrainian nationalists have made it clear, yet the West continues to turn a blind eye. But what is the root causes of the conflict? Ukraine's trying to drag Ukraine into NATO, putting NATO's military infrastructure on Russia's borders, ignoring the European security guarantees, all past treaties, all past agreements. Again, that was a mistake in the early days of Putin. That was a mistake by Yeltsin and Gorbachev, who all sought guarantees from Europe and all got lip service, primarily from Bush and Clinton. But the coalition of the willing ain't so willing. And there ain't 26 nations I see either. This is a peace deal on the table. The ball is in the Americans' court. Zelensky was invited to Moscow. He refuses to go, yet in the same breath, everybody's accusing Russia of being unreasonable. How? This is always this petty politics of posturing. And Zelensky is posturing only because he has Europe and nothing to lose. If Zelensky had... It's not Zelensky's family in Ukraine. It's not Zelensky's son fighting the war. It's not Zelensky's children doing the dying. But same with the Ukrainian nationalists. Europe's talking about the Nazis. Just don't ask Germany how many AfD candidates died this election. 7. Although some say it could be as high as 10. There is now Germany's falling, just like France. Germany's falling in the one-party state rule. France is falling in the one-party state rule. England. People are questioning now the election of Keir Starmer and realising that, wait a minute, he's a minority government. People are waking up that the Ukraine war is created by European leaders to stay in power. Because we can't hold elections during a war, and they're trying to expand the war so they can stay in power. The forever war. Heidemann wrote about it. Many have wrote about it, where governments use war to stay in power. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And please check out the links in the description. Support me on Patreon. Buy my books or buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree. Description below or in my profile. You can scan the QR code as well. Thank you. And I'll see you all in the next video. And bye for now.